Hello, and welcome back to Intro to PvE, the series where I help you start your journey to becoming a rated R PvE superstar. This next operation we're going to cover is the second easiest operation in the game, the Eternity Vault, also known as EV. EV is the first operation we're talking about that has some resemblance of actual mechanics, but don't worry, most of them are pretty straightforward. The recommended composition for this raid is going to be 1 tank, 5 DPS, and 2 heals, but you can run 2 tanks and 4 DPS, or if you're feeling ballsy, you can run 1 tank, 6 DPS, and 1 heals if your healer is up to the challenge. The first boss you're going to encounter is Annihilation Droid XRR3. How this is going to work is the tank is going to turn the boss so he is facing one of these building outcroppings. This is because XXR is going to do a knockback, which is going to send the tank sailing a good distance away. But if you position correctly, you're going to smack your back on one of these outcroppings and then immediately be able to hop back into the fight. There are 2 raid-wide mechanics for this boss, the first of which being Missile Salvo, where XSR will channel an extended barrage of missiles on every player that is unavoidable. When this happens, just stack the whole raid together and let the healers AoE through the damage. You should also be popping some defensive cooldowns during this time. The second raid-wide mechanic is going to be Storm Protocol. When Storm Protocol happens, the boss is going to drop red circles at everyone's feet. Do not stand in these circles. You want to slowly kite out of these circles to prevent yourself from taking a decent chunk of damage. We do our best not to stand in stupid here. That's pretty much it when it comes to XXR. Just damage on the boss and you'll be ready to move on to the next portion of the raid. EV actually has a skip here, where if you're able to get a stealther to jump down off the ledge, that stealther can race through the rest of the trash until they reach the next boss. The stealther then pulls the boss, stealths out, and then this speeder will spawn, which will take the entire raid right up to the next boss. This saves about 10 minutes of running and killing ads, so if you're a stealther, do your raid a favor and learn how to make this jump. For operatives, just position properly and roll forward, or if you're an assassin, just use force speed and jump and you'll make the jump, no problem. Next we have Gharj. Gharj looks scary but isn't. The tank is going to drag Gharj to the corner of one of these platforms and hold him there. Gharj will occasionally knock players off the platform, but just run back on and resume doing damage until Gharj enters a frenzy, at which point rocks will fall from the ceiling, revealing the next platform. During this time, the raid will jump over the next platform, and the cycle will begin again. Halfway through this fight, dogs will begin to spawn whenever the platform spawns. The DPS should swap to dogs and nuke them, and then get back onto the boss. That's really it when it comes to mechanics here. Just don't stand in lava, kill the dogs, and then move on to the rocks, and you should be fine. When we move on to the next boss, the Pylons, you're going to split the raid into 2 halves. One is going to go north, and the other is going to go south. The primary mechanic of this boss is finding out the solution to the puzzle. As you can see on this console, there is a button on the left, a button on the right, and a button in the middle. The side buttons are used to move the middle column either left or right. Once a row has matching colors, you can lock the colors using the middle button. Once the north and south teams have solved that row, you will advance on to the next row, and this cycle is repeated until you have finished all 4 rows and solved the puzzle. Solving the puzzle can be accomplished one of 2 ways, by either guessing or finding the correct solution. Most of the time in story mode, you'll be just fine by simply clicking left over and over and over again until you find the matching color. There's not that much of a time crunch when it comes to story mode. However, if you want to help your team, you can use this fancy puzzle solver in where you plug in which colors are on which row, and then it'll spit out your answer. Then you follow those instructions up the tree, solving each line just a little bit faster. While you're solving this puzzle, ads will begin to spawn. Most of these ads are relatively harmless, more obnoxious than dangerous really. However, when an accolade spawns, they will do a decent chunk of damage, so you'll want to pop a defensive cooldown should one start attacking you. Once you solve the puzzle, the fight ends, and you are cleared to move on to the next phase of the operation. The next boss is the Infernal Council, which really isn't a boss, more of an individual check of talent. Each player will be assigned to kill 1 boss. Generally, Juggernauts will be taken by tanks, Marauders will be taken by DPS, and Assassins should be taken by healers. Once the fight begins, you are not allowed to touch any other player or any other target. You are completely on your own and must 1v1 your target until either it dies or you die. So that means no Kolto probes, no raid buffs, no AoEs, no Kolto shields, nothing. You must be completely on your own during this encounter. If you're struggling with this boss, there's a couple things you can do. First, if you're a healer, you can literally just swap specs to a DPS spec for this boss and then nuke your target instead of trying to deal with killing it as a healer. Secondly, if you get done with your boss early, you can use one and only one ability on a different boss. So if you have a healer that's struggling to get their target down, you can just use your largest damaging ability on that player's boss to help them out just a little bit. And that's it. Just don't touch anyone else and you'll be fine. Finally, we come to the boss that's probably the most intimidating option we've encountered so far. That is SWTOR. This fight is broken up into 3 phases and 2 platforming sections, so let's walk through them one by one. The first phase is really simple. Attack SWTOR. He's going to be immune for a few seconds, so wait until he drops his shield, and then you can begin to damage him. Occasionally, the pylons around the room will create this green-blue AoE circle. Move out of that, we try not to stand stupid here, and then just DPS the boss until 75%, at which point he will become immune, and you will have to move to the far east of the outer platform, which is where you drop down into the arena to begin with. At this point, the platforms will begin to slowly drop away, falling into the abyss below. You're going to need to slowly walk down these descending set of platforms until you reach the bottom. During this phase, mercenaries and operatives and sorcerers should definitely be off healing to help out their healers. This is probably the biggest chunk of raid-wide damage you're going to take this entire operation. As you walk down these platforms, you may encounter a time where there's nowhere else to jump to, but don't worry, more platforms will spawn over time, so just take this period to heal up and regen your health. As you jump down these platforms, you're going to see these yellow pylons on each platform. Kill them as you make your way down, as this will reduce SWTOR's damage during the next phase. Once you reach the floor, the second phase of the boss begins. There are a few mechanics that you have to take note of here, the first being Mind Trap. The Mind Trap will suck a player into another dimension where they will be trapped. The rest of the raid must then swap targets and kill the Mind Trap in order to release them. The second mechanic is the Lightning Orb. You will see a large text along the top of your screen that says, "So-and-so player has been targeted by the Lightning Orb." That player must run and touch the ball that's coming for them, which will detonate the orb and prevent it from doing damage to the rest of the raid. That's really it for Phase 2. Just touch your balls and kill the Mind Trap and you should be fine. Once SWTOR reaches 30%, he's going to repeat the platforming mechanic. So gather your team on the far east of the platform and then jump down the same as you did before, off healing and killing these yellow pylons all the way down until you reach the bottom. At the bottom of the platform, the Mind Trap and Lightning Orb mechanics will resume as they did in Phase 2, but now you'll notice that SWTOR is immune to all damage. This is where the tank needs to go to work. SWTOR is going to summon these massive pylons in the sky. They're going to spin and create this gigantic blue AoE marker and eventually plummet into the ground. If SWTOR is standing in this AoE marker when the pylon drops, he's going to become vulnerable, at which point you can start to DPS him down. Therefore, the tank should try to stand on the outside of this AoE and pull SWTOR into the AoE, so that way SWTOR gets knocked down and become vulnerable, and then you can actually damage the boss. It should be noted that the tank can also take damage from this AoE, so try to stand on the outside of this AoE and keep SWTOR on the inside. Fortunately, because SWTOR is immune from most of this phase, your entire DPS team is going to be free to focus down the Mind Traps when they spawn. Additionally, if your tank gets Mind Trapped, a DPS with a taunt, so an assassin, a power tech, or a juggernaut, should take over and bring SWTOR to the massive blue AoE. It's going to take 2, 3, or sometimes 4 of these vulnerable windows to drop him down, but once you've killed SWTOR, the fight and the operation ends. Congrats, you just finished EV. EV is another simple operation. It does have mechanics you need to look out for, but fortunately, if you just focus on the basic mechanics that we covered here, you're going to be perfectly fine. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Happy hunting, and welcome to the next step in your PvE journey.